Hey everybody, it's Anna and welcome back to my BookTube channel. We're going to be continuing what began with a discussion I started on my channel in a previous video about PEN America's report that 10% of the banned and challenged books in the US last school year feature a character who is disabled in some way. So if you have not already watched that video, I'll make sure it's linked in the description so that you can get kind of caught up on where we are here. But one of the things that I have decided to do in my own small way to provide an antidote to the awfulness that is the censorship happening right now is to make a couple different videos about books for children that you can read and get from your library for Disability Pride Month, and then I'm going to post my own personal TBR a little bit later. So in case you didn't know, the entire month of July is Disability Pride Month, and while we do our Disability Readathon in April to celebrate the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act, this is a thing that I read all year, to be perfectly honest. It's not limited to a month or even two, because let's face it, I am militantly proud all year round. So we're going to go ahead and get started with some of the kids' books. And I wanted to shout out very specifically the Baltimore County Public Library because I have gotten, I think, every single book. Yes, every book that is going on this and my TBR, which are the books written for adults, came from the library. They did a phenomenal job of curating a virtual book display for a variety of ages for Disability Pride Month, and they also have physical displays in the various library branch locations. So even if you're not local to the area, go check and see if your library has something like that. And definitely tell the librarians there that you appreciate that, if you appreciate being able to find books that are by disabled authors or that feature disabled characters. So we're going to start with some picture books and then go into some more like middle grade, maybe upper middle grade YA books. So the first book that I checked out here is How Are You, Verity, written by Megan Wilson Duff and illustrated by Taylor Barron. This is a story of Verity, who is some sort of neurodivergent and also uses they, them pronouns. Verity is also a person of color. So again, like we talked about in the previous video, that trifecta of the identities that are most likely to get you banned from the school library. But anyway, this is a story about Verity's school taking their class trip to the local aquarium. Verity has what I would think is more of a special interest type interest in aquarium animals and gets very excited about sharing those types of facts with people whenever they're asked, how are you? So Verity has a family member that sort of gently lets them know a lot of times people, when they ask, how are you, are just doing it to be polite. So it is kind of this sort of balancing this learning experience that Verity is having about like neurotypical social norms while also calling in their neurotypical peers to share in their excitement and joy about this class trip to the aquarium. Very beautifully illustrated, and I love this picture of them with the neurodiversity rainbow infinity symbol and high-fiving an octopus on the back of the book. Next one is one of my very favorite picture books for children about disability. This is All the Way to the Top, How One Girl's Fight for Americans with Disabilities Changed Everything. The book is written by Annette Bay Pimentel and pictures by Nabi H. Ali with a foreword by Jennifer Keelan Chaffins. Jennifer is the young girl that participated in the Capitol Crawl, which, if you're not familiar, was a very mass mobilization of people that were campaigning for Congress and the president to pass the Americans with Disabilities Act in the 1990s, and in order to demonstrate how inaccessible government buildings were and also to protest that inaccessibility, a lot of disabled individuals that had mobility issues literally crawled up the steps of the US Capitol building and went, as the title says, all the way to the top, including Jennifer, who I believe was about 8 years old at the time, and who has cerebral palsy. And this worked. I mean, this was part of a very coordinated national campaign that included things like targeting public transportation for accessibility, targeting disabled children's right to go to school in their own communities, people's right to not be institutionalized, but to live independently in their communities and make their own choices. I really love this book. I love that there is great information in the back, both for a child reader and for an adult. about what life was like before and after the ADA. What is a disability? What is an activist? And it's got this picture of the real life Jennifer in the back. And yeah, definitely one of my top reads here. Next, we have another picture book written by a disabled author. I have read some of her books for the Disability Readathon in the past, and she is also a great Instagram follow, and this is Rebecca Tausig's book, We Are the Scrappy Ones. So she is the author of the words, and the pictures are by Kirby Fagan. This is new to me. I'm actually not sure how recently it came out, but I feel like it must have just been very, very recently. Yeah, it just came out this year. That's what it is. And there are a lot of different disability activists who show up here in illustration form, and Rebecca herself is a wheelchair user, and the illustrator has Crohn's disease, so you can tell from their author's notes in the backs what a labor of love this really sweet story was. And it is basically a love letter to the scrappiness, the ingenuity, the resilience, and the joy of disabled children and adults. Definitely recommend it. All right, next up we have Maybe Just Ask Me, which is written and illustrated by Katie Mazeka. This is a story of a young girl named Maisie who goes to her first day at her new school wearing her favorite headscarf and an eye patch. Maisie, like the author Katie herself, lost an eye to cancer as a young child. And this is a story about not assuming why someone looks the way they are or speculating about someone's disability, but if you have questions, maybe just ask them in a respectful way. I like that this is a book that teaches children that it's okay to ask questions and that we can't ever really know what's going on inside of someone's head or what someone's true story is until we get to know them a little bit better. I really thought that this was super sweet, and I know that the author has written a couple of other different books for children, so I don't know if those have disability rep, but I'll be checking those out at some point. This next book is The Girl Who Figured It Out, the inspiring true story of wheelchair athlete Minda Dentler becoming an Ironman world champion. The words are by Minda Dentler, and the pictures by Stephanie Deneen, I think is how that is pronounced. Minda is a wheelchair user who became the first female wheelchair athlete, to complete the Ironman World Championship, which is a very extreme and intense triathlon. Minda grew up in India and developed polio as a young child because she did not have access to the vaccine. So as an adult, in addition to being a professional triathlete, she also does a lot of pro-vaccine advocacy and advocacy for children's rights to access healthcare all around the world. I want to say I had seen her at some point on What Not to Wear, which is like a real blast from the past. I'm not sure if that was actually her, but I think it was. So I was at least like decently familiar with this woman, but I really liked this book because there's just, again, not a ton of representation specifically on like disabled athletes for children. And this is a really good book. And I love the way that all of the various adaptive athletes are illustrated. So here's her doing her hand cycle, and there's also a character with a running blade here. So it's just showing people that are not just disabled in the same way she is, but everyone kind of participating in the triathlon and in these races together. Next up is Mighty Mara, which is written by Karina Ho and Jesse Bird and illustrated by Monica Paula Rodriguez. This is a story about a young girl named Mara who is a little bit different from all of the other kids in her class. She is a wheelchair user, and when it comes time for her school's talent show that they're going to put on, she's going to do something special. She's going to dance. Dancing is her favorite thing. This is also kind of a story about how, yes, just because like disability might mean that you do something in a different way than a non-disabled person doesn't mean that it's not awesome and that you shouldn't do it. So this is actually all about her doing her wheelchair dancing for her school's talent show. It's super awesome. Karina Ho, one of the authors, is a wheelchair dancer as well, and there's a few different other kind of stories in the back that are like anecdotes from the author and illustrator's own lives, which I also appreciate. And then last but not least, this is one of my favorite books about disability for children. This is How We Play, a celebration of disability and adaptation. This is written by, let me get all the names right, Jessica Slice and Caroline Cupp, and illustrated by Kayla Herron. I'm just going to show you this like Where's Waldo beautiful gathering of disabled adults, children, people from all stages of life playing at this playground. This is beautiful. This is very beautiful to me. And this is a book that the authors wrote because they are disabled themselves and they wanted to write a book where disability was portrayed across multiple generations. One of my least favorite things in disability literature is when the disabled person is written completely in isolation and there's no community between them and any other disabled person whatsoever. I do understand that in some circumstances, people can be isolated, particularly if their disability is caused by, say, a rare genetic condition. There may not be very many people that have that exact same thing. But similar to the queer community, like, we tend to run in packs, you know? Like, it's very unusual, I think, if you are disabled, for you to have no disabled friends whatsoever. At least that's been my experience of the people that I have met. But this is a beautiful book. I love the way that it is illustrated. I love how playful all of the characters are. And it goes so far beyond like depicting what you might think of the more like common depictions of disability in children's books, I suppose. So like there are characters in wheelchairs, there are characters who are blind who are using white cane or who are guide dog handlers. But like this little kid who's looking out the window, out the telescope at the stars at night, is an AAC user. And that's not something that I see super often. Let me see, where is another one? Yeah, this is what looks like a queer family to me, and one of the dads is a little person, and the other dad not. He's like regular height, and they're all just playing like fantasy dragon slayers and stuff like that. And I find books like this to be so important. I find them to be very healing as an adult, but I also think that they're like even more important for children to be exposed to regardless of their disability status. So that's just to get you started on some picture books. Now we're gonna go into a couple of like middle grade, maybe upper middle grade, going into the younger YA books. I have not read any of these yet. These are on my like TBR for July, and then however long it takes me to actually finish them. And these also came recommended from the librarians. So first up, we have Whale Eyes, a memoir about seeing and being seen by James Robinson with illustrations by Brian Rea. This is a book that is the author's memoir about his life with a visual impairment. That's self-described. He said that growing up with severely misaligned eyes, James stared at books the way his classmates stared at him, confused, repulsed, and a bit disgusted. In this humorous and heartfelt memoir, James returns to the format that he used to dread, reimagining what a book can be. Very here for that, to be honest. Readers will wrestle with words on the page, fail eye exams, practice reading upside down, and experience how James ultimately broke through to those who stare at him, with a short film that was picked up by the New York Times and went viral upon its release. By spotlighting the unsaid and the unseen, Whale Eyes equips readers of all ages with the tools to confront their discomfort with disability and turn confused blank stares into powerful connections. Featuring breezy yet tender prose and interactive design and poignant illustrations by world-renowned artist Brian Rea, Whale Eyes isn't just a captivating story, it's an invitation to a more kind, thoughtful, and caring version of ourselves. I am really interested to read this. I kind of flipped through it and saw these little line drawings in here, and there's a couple of pages that have almost magical eye, optical illusion type things printed on the page that are part of the experience of reading the story. So it seems like it's also very unique in terms of playing on the form and the structure of the book. Looking forward to that. Next we have, I believe this is the third book. Is this the third book? Yes, in the Out of My Mind series by Sharon M. Draper, this is Out of My Dreams. So again, this is the third book in a series, but if you're interested based off of the premise of this, go back and read Out of My Mind, which is the first. I believe it was also made into a movie. So let's read the blurb of this. Melody, this is the main character of the trilogy, is electric with excitement. She did something very, very wonderful for someone who was very, very thankful, and now she's going on her first ever airplane flight to London. Will her wheelchair make it there in one piece? Will she finally find a best friend to be silly with? Go on a heart-thumping adventure? Maybe even meet a prince. Will she be brave enough to give a speech when she has never uttered a single word in her entire life? So for context, in the first book, Melody has CP and she's non-speaking, but she's an AAC user. And the first book is about her getting the AAC and beginning to communicate with it. Will a dream of her own enable others to have dreams of their own? What Melody will discover is that some dreams can come true, sometimes in the most unexpected ways. The third book in the Out of My Mind trilogy sees dreams fulfilled and new ones being dared to be dreamt of. That last sentence was a little bit awkward, but I really liked the first book in this series. I might need to revisit the second one because I honestly don't remember what happened in it, but very good. All right. Next up, we have Jude Saves the World by Ronnie Riley. Let's do the blurb here. 12-year-old Jude struggles with focusing at school, feeling like everything rests on their shoulders, and not being out as non-binary to their old-fashioned grandparents. But at least Jude has Dallas, their best friend in the whole world. Jude and Dallas have always depended on each other, but everything changes when they learn Stevie, a popular girl in their class, has been kicked out of her clique. And Jude decides to reach out to see if Stevie's okay. Soon she becomes a real friend to Jude and Dallas. Stevie's unconditional acceptance when Jude comes out to her gets them thinking about trust and safe spaces and how everyone deserves the kind of support that they get from their friends. Jude decides to create the first diversity club in their town, but will they be able to bring their community together to make it happen? Especially when a betrayal shakes their confidence. Can one kid really change their world? This is a joyful and heartwarming story about creating community, perfect for fans of Alex Gino and AJ Sass. So basically what I'm getting from this blurb is me. This is perfect for me. I love both of those authors, and this one actually wasn't part of the display. This was just randomly out on a shelf in the middle grade section, and I thought it looked interesting. Didn't even know it was related to disability, but very excited to read that. And the last kids book that I have here is Please Pay Attention by Jamie Sumner, who is the author of Roll With It, which is another book that I read for a previous disability readathon. So here is our blurb. There is a before and an after for 6th grader B. Coughlin. Before the shooting at her school that took the lives of her classmates and teacher, and after when she must figure out how to grieve, live, and keep rolling forward. But as her community rallies in a tidal wave of marches and speeches and protests, Bee can't get past the helplessness she felt in her wheelchair as others around her took cover. And for context, frequently emergency plans for things like fire drills or school shootings leave out disabled children or disabled students or employees entirely from that emergency plan. So I believe that's what the she's feeling helpless while others around her take cover is all about. Through the help of therapeutic horseback riding, Bee finally begins to feel like herself again. And as she heals, she finds her voice and the bravery to demand change. Told in powerful verse, we love a novel in verse, Please Pay Attention asks the timely question, who will fight for those who should not have to fight alone? So this is not written by a disabled author, but this author is a parent to a disabled child and is a self-described disability advocate. I found Roll With It to be a pretty good read, so I'm confident recommending this as well. And those are all of the books that are written for a young audience that I have to share with you today. I will be sharing my TBR of books written for an adult audience in the next video, so hopefully you have enough to tide you over until then. So thanks always so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.